Welcome to the Greystone Manor podcast. I'm your host, Pro, and we're going to be talking about how to survive Mercury retrograde. If you're listening to this podcast or even watching it as it's up and live right now, we are currently in Mercury retrograde in the sign of Cancer. So I might stumble over my words a little bit, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be a bunch of takes of this podcast to make sure that I get it, quote unquote, just right. Which that should lead me into what is Mercury retrograde? Mercury retrograde happens roughly 3 times a year, and it's when the planet Mercury is perceived to be moving backwards. So going in the opposite direction or going against the grain. So when something like that happens, we generally think and we feel that energy of tension, friction, going against the grain, like, having a little bit more trouble, like going up the hill type of deal, or going against the flow of traffic, whatever analogy or description you want to use there. And I want to talk about how Mercury is the ruling planet of Gemini and Virgo. So, in general, Mercury retrograde is mostly focused around those themes of Gemini and Virgo. So, Gemini energy is the social butterfly, the communicator, the socialite, pretty much. And Virgo energy is about the structure, the routines, coming correct with the receipts, even talking about like our routines from a fitness standpoint. So when retrograde happens, which is this backwards motion, we can feel a slowing down effect or a muddled effect around these energies. So this is why a lot of people are like, be careful with your communication, back up all of your technology. Your routines might be completely thrown off. That's why a lot of those themes come up. So for me, I have 3 bullet points that I go by to kind of quote unquote survive Mercury retrograde. The first one is do not make any large scale life decisions during this time. And that's usually something around like, buying a house, moving, getting married, even just taking a job promotion, changing jobs, more like major decisions. I'm not talking about small things such as, making a purchase off of Amazon or going out to the store, going out to eat. However, it can impact those areas too, just maybe not as large as these big life decisions. So for example, because I'm getting into this idea of storytelling, but for example, when I had a move coming up, so right before I moved into my now current house, I almost moved here 2 months beforehand. And that was when there was a Mercury retrograde. And I actually paused. I was like, I don't think I should be making this type of decision. It's time to wait. Let me wait till Mercury retrograde's over and see how I feel afterwards. And thank goodness I waited, because the place that I was looking at ended up staying on the market and dropping in price. Yes, it dropped in price. And the only reason why I know that, because I took screenshots on Zillow, because I wanted to make sure that, I wasn't, just jumping into something that I couldn't financially handle. I was like, oh no, maybe I won't be able to read the contract well enough. And you know what? I'm glad that I waited, because if I would have jumped into something like that, first of all, I would have been 2 months deep into a higher price point. And second of all, there could have been something in that contract I would have missed, because again, there's a slowing down effect. The communication is muddled. Maybe I wouldn't have picked something up, all of that. So in general, I like to recommend, along with a bunch of other astrologers, that try not to make any big life decisions during this time. And if there is a big life decision, take as much time as you need in between reading or communicating, and to give yourself time to reflect and reread things 2, 3, 4 times over and over again and make sure that you fully understand it and ask more questions during this time if it's appropriate. The second survival tip that I have is to back up all of your technology. So, technology, the whole reason why we have the association of technology and Mercury retrograde has to do with our socialization that happens online and through technology. So, for example, if you have a text message thread that you don't want to get rid of, you might want to back up your phone and make sure that you don't lose it during this time frame. It's also the same thing with like photos, even social media. There have been countless people who have had their accounts banned or shadow banned or just randomly taken off. At one point, this was a few years ago. I think it was 2023, 2024. I logged on to my Etsy and I found out half of my listings were removed because they violated some type of Etsy code claiming that like I didn't make that actual product. And I am so glad that I actually had a recording of myself making those products. So I actually had to go on there and dispute it. And none of that would have happened if I would have been more clear in making those posts and those lists on Etsy saying like this is handmade or this is vintage or whatever the options are now today. But it was still a shock being like, oh my gosh, this is kind of really important for me. I was trying to build this shop up, all this stuff, and then having half your listings automatically removed. They weren't even going to reinstate them unless I actually had proof. So that happened to me during Mercury retrograde a few years back, and that was not fun at all. So if you were somebody who has like an online presence or you like using technology to stay in touch with people, or even if you like to read your books on like a Kindle or on technology or iPad or a tablet, it is a really good time to make sure that you have everything downloaded, backed up, charged, anything of that nature. Just a suggestion. You don't have to do it though. And the third survival tip that I have is to take this time to go into hermit mode. So Mercury retrograde usually lasts 3 to 5 weeks. Mercury retrograde will happen for 3 weeks, but there is a shadow period beforehand and afterwards. The shadow period is just saying that we feel the energy coming on, and then afterwards we feel the energy lifting. So it's just kind of a safety net is 3 to 5 weeks. And during that time frame, I like to suggest going into a hermit mode. For me, when I go into hermit mode, it's a perfect time to self-reflect. It's a perfect time to start working on parts of my routine that are not structured. So, for example, I have a really bad nighttime routine right now. And I feel like I've always had that, but it gets very chaotic during Mercury retrograde. Thanks. So, my nighttime routine usually consists of doing some type of activity that's calming, whether it's watching something calming on TV. Like recently, I've been doing the old throwbacks of how it's made. Freaking amazing. It feels like it's grandpa TV, and I absolutely love it. But either way, so I usually like to do a calming activity, which is, watching something calming on TV, crocheting, or coloring. I like to do those things to kind of like help my brain, quote unquote, turn off and start winding down. Then I will usually go to the bathroom, start my nighttime routine, like wash hands, wash face, brush teeth, get in pajamas, and lay down in bed. And the goal is to not touch my phone. Okay, simple nighttime routine. Well, every time it's Mercury retrograde, tell me, why is there always something messing up my nighttime routine? So just last night, the basement flooded, completely flooded, 2 inches of water, destroyed a few things that were stored down there. And it's just like, why? Why did this happen? Because now I'm aggravated, I'm upset, I am sad, I am working on rescuing everything down there, moving everything to a safe location. It was just a complete hassle. So by the time my head hit the pillow, did I do a calming activity? No. Did I go to the bathroom to wash face, hands, brush teeth, and get into my pajamas? No. head hit pillow, went right to sleep, woke up, and I was groggy. I was just like, oh, I should have done my nighttime routine. My brain already woke up thinking a bunch of thoughts. So during Mercury retrograde, it's a good thing to be in a hermit mode, because if your home routines get thrown off, or your own personal routines on for day-to-day living gets thrown off, even as simple as, oh crap, I didn't make dinner, or I didn't meal prep, or I missed a meal, for anything like that, that's kind of the Virgo energy of Mercury. But anything like that, if it gets thrown off, it could easily affect how you present yourself when you go to work, when you go to the family function, when you hang out with your friends or communicate with them online. So, hermit mode is a good time to just allow the weird chaos to happen and use that as a way to learn, where are my weaknesses? What can I do better on? What are my blind spots that need a little bit more time and attention, or things that I'm not seeing? All of it is perfect. And as a little bonus, I would love to suggest doing a solo hike. Now, first of all, make sure that you're safe, especially for people who are like femme presenting. Please be safe being alone out there. Make sure it's a well traveled trail. Please just be safe. However, I do want to say, please take that solo hike, whether it's a walk in nature, walk around town, a strenuous hike going up a huge mountain, whatever it is in your fitness realm there. I would suggest doing that during Mercury retrograde. It is a great time to reflect. It's a great time to build that relationship with yourself. And it's a great way to kind of mix up your routine so that hopefully nothing bad happens in your routine. And as another bonus to surviving Mercury retrograde, let's say you can't change anything in your life. You're like, listen, I have my routine set. I have my friend groups. We do breakfast every Sunday, or whatever it is. And you're like, well, how am I supposed to survive Mercury retrograde if I can't be a hermit, if I can't back up my technology, if I can't, get out of a big life change? What can I do? My friend, I would like to suggest color magic, because I am woo woo and a bit spiritual, and or at least we're not on the deep end. Okay, we're close, but we're not in the deep end. Okay, that's just me. Color magic suggests wearing brown or green during this time, or having a brown or green crystal on you. What this is going to do is help, one, ground your energy so that it doesn't feel as chaotic or out of balance. And number two, it is going to bring the cozy vibes needed, especially in communication. It's going to help you bring that balance of being direct, but also incorporating feelings. Another thing with brown, like the color brown, that is going to remind you of home. And then the color green is going to help remind you of that you are part of this flow of nature. Those colors are also associated with Gemini and Virgo energy, which are ruled by Mercury. So if you're into that kind of thing, maybe wear like a brown or green bracelet, or wear a top, change your socks out, maybe your shoes, whichever it is. If you just want to call in that energy and not feel like it's slowing you down, or feeling muddled, or feeling friction, I would highly recommend wearing green or brown. And with that, I am going to get going, because I just had another idea for a blog post and a podcast. And I'm thinking I want to talk about friendship, because this idea of being in Mercury retrograde and communication getting all wackadoodle, it's making me think of my friendships, and I would love to maybe talk about that in the next episode. So until next time, I'll talk to you later. Bye.